Good morning, Julia. How are you?
I'm good. How are you this morning?
I am really great. So we had a really nice conversation with Sam Sorbo on Monday, didn't we?
Yes, that was so good. My favorite part was when she was talking about prioritizing. It's like, are your kids your priority? And that is the question.
Do you know, honestly, that was it for me too. I think I was shocked when she said, we're so used to preparing lists, and a list isn't really a prioritization, it's just a list. And I thought, wow, I mean, it really kind of changed the way I thought about some things. So, including what I'm doing around my house right now. So, yeah. So, for all of you who are watching this morning, what we're going to do is Julie and I are going to get off, and then we are going to pull up our recording with Sam from Monday. And then if you've got any comments, feel free to leave them in the space. We'll still be watching those. But we really hope you enjoy your time with Sam, the interview that we did with Sam. She had lots of really great things to say, very worthwhile. So
Very encouraging. Very encouraging.
Exactly. So enjoy the show. So hello, Mrs. Sorbo. How are you today?
That's funny. Mrs. Sorbo is my pen name.
Is it really? I love that.
Yeah, it's when I did my devotional and I made it. No, when I wrote my first homeschooling book, I decided that I wanted to appear like the teacher, Mrs.
I love
Sorbo. So
that.
that's what I put on my. The first book was They're Your Kids, and then I used it again on Teach from Love, which is the school year devotional for parents and their kids. So
Well, and let me bring this up so that we have this too. So this is Sam's website. And if you just scroll down through Sam's website, you can find all of these books. They're Your Kids right here, where she's Mrs. Sam Sorbo, the teacher. And she's got Playbook for Home Learning, which we'll talk a little bit about today too. But all of these things, there's you on PragerU. And you can even keep in touch with Sam down at the bottom. So this is Sam's website, samsorbo.com. So go to that website and find the resources like They're Your Kids. And by the way, I think you gave me that book, or I bought that book or something. And it was, I think, probably one of my favorite books. I loved I loved that particular book. I think it was a great book and very encouraging.
you're talking about They're Your Kids.
Yes, I
because
really liked.
So, it basically covers why I started to consider home education in the first place, because I was one of those people who was like, I was never going to do that. I had plans, man. I had a career. I had a whole life ahead of me. And my kids were supposed to just go to school and shut up already. Not really, but sort of.
Yeah.
So I started to impeach sort of, there's some issues with our school system. And the more I uncovered just in my son's classroom. So this is before the COVID, this is before the transgender, this is before all of the muck that we see in the classroom today.
Yes.
And I just was like, I said to Kevin, I think I can fail at home education and he'll still be better off. That was for my oldest in second grade. And so then I pulled them out of school, and then I started to realize everything else that was going wrong. But I documented sort of my journey. I started blogging, and the more I blogged, the more I realized, there are a lot of parents out there. The more involved I got in the homeschool community and stuff like that, I realized there are just a lot of parents out there who could really benefit from this story. And I've had a lot of parents give me that same kind of response. Like, this book was really meaningful to me because it in a sense, it met me where I was and helped me see my path forward. And that's really why I put the book together, is to help other parents make this shift. It's a cataclysmic shift of paradigm for an American family. And
It is.
Once you realize, and this is why, I'm frustrated by this whole thing, Jenny. Once you realize the tremendous blessing that keeping your kids home and sort of teaching them yourself does for you, it betters your life in ways you can't possibly imagine. Because you went to school, so you don't get it until you do it, until you're in it. And then once you're in it and you realize what a blessing it is, and you realize how great a relationship you can have with your children, despite what the culture says about teenagers always rebel or all of those different things, right? Then you start to get a little angry that they would so wantonly try to rob you of this tremendous blessing. in your life. And so that's what I really seek to bring to parents, so that they can see that.
Well, and I kind of, because I
good.
don't think everybody watching has knows quite your story, but you were living in California, right? And a part of the entertainment scene, and you have 3 children, right?
Right.
And you started with them in public school?
Oh yeah. So my oldest we moved. We literally moved houses for the public school.
So did we.
So, because you want a house in that good school zone, whatever. And so we didn't like the schools where we were, and we thought, we could actually do with a shift to go out into a little bit more rural area and not be so urban and we lived on a very busy canyon in Bel Air, and no sidewalks, just cars zipping up and down. Even though it was a dead end, it was a very long canyon. And so there was a lot of traffic, and we thought we could get twice the house with, twice the land. Or rather, it was funny because our house in Bel Air was on an acre, but it was vertical. So I had no yard. I had a terrace and nothing in the back. I had a wall of green in the back, which was basically mountainside that was covered with vines.
Wow.
And so we went from a vertical acre to a horizontal acre, and the kids had a lawn and better schools.
Yeah.
And I felt so blessed and so privileged to get my son into the better school. And then, the first day of school, you get assigned the day before school starts, they post the teacher that your son has been assigned. Your child gets assigned a teacher. They post it the day before school because they don't want any back talk. You're going to like the teacher that you were assigned, and that's it. So sit down and shut up like you've been taught to do in class.
Right.
And don't ask questions like you've been taught to do in class. Yeah. And so my girlfriend went because she'd been in that community for a long time. And so she went to the school to see where her daughter was assigned. And so she looked at my son and she texted me. She said, "Your son got the best first grade teacher. Congratulations. That is awesome news." And I'm like, wow, luck of the draw. We got the best pick for first grade teacher. Well, it wasn't until the end of second grade that I realized why she was everybody's favorite teacher. Jenny, can you guess why she was everybody's favorite teacher?
She didn't make him do anything?
No, she kept a bucket of candy.
Oh.
And if you could go all the way, so the school went through 5th grade. You could go all the way through 5th grade. If you were a 5th grader or any grade, and you went back to her classroom and gave her a hug, she'd give you a piece of candy.
Oh my goodness.
Okay.
Everybody's favorite teacher.
Yeah.
I'm like, now here's the thing. I can't begrudge her. There's, you figure out the system, you get it done. And I don't know that she was a bad teacher. She was a lovely woman. But in terms of how we judge teachers, okay, our metrics are completely screwed. Come on, right? So the best teacher the favorite teacher was the teacher who kept candy all the time. And there are other metrics like that. We have no idea what we're doing when it comes to education. We only know what we were taught. And we were taught by the same corrupt system that you see now is telling children that they can change their gender willy-nilly, which, by the way, so this is interesting. So if you're gay, you were born that way, and there's nothing you can do about it, right? But if you're transgender, you were not born the way you want to be, and so you should be permitted to change it because you were born wrong.
Right.
I'm like,
yeah.
Okay, wait, my head is spinning because there's no logic.
You can change.
There's no logic. There's whatever they want when they want it. They're like children. They're like eternal children. I want it now.
Well, and that's the idea, to infantilize us all and keep us that way because we're so easily led, when we're all 5, because all we want is candy.
And that's why the last thing you should do is put your children in school.
Yeah. So how long did you actually keep the kids in school then?
So my son went through 1st and 2nd grade, and then my other 2 did kindergarten at the public school. Okay. But sort of in a marginal way. So my middle child started napping again midway through the first semester of kindergarten. I think it was about then. I tried to drop him off at school, and he said he didn't want to go. This was after a long trip, so it was his first day back. And I'm like, why don't you want to go? And he was like, no, Mommy, I don't want to go. And I said, well, you have to go. It's school. You're supposed to go. Well, they had scheduled him for afternoon kindergarten. I didn't want him in afternoon kindergarten because he was a good napper. But, you do what the school tells you to do, and you don't throw a fit. You get what you get. You don't throw a fit. And so,
Right.
I had learned how to get the good grades, right, in school. So I behaved. I obeyed the rules. And they assigned him an afternoon kindergarten, and I went to drop him off on one particular day, and he didn't want to go. And I finally said to him, listen, if he was crying in the back seat, and I didn't want to force him because kindergarten really wasn't that important to me. I just thought that it was, a good thing for him to do, right? And because we grew up in the system, we think the system is infinitely benevolent. And this is a new idea that I've been working on that I'll share with you. What we do is we personalize the failures. So if I can't do math, it's because I don't have a math brain.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm just weak at doing calculations, and that's me. That's all me, right? But if we're good at something, I excel at math. I had the best math teachers. They taught me so much. They were so awesome, my math teachers. Other people didn't learn from them like I did, but the system is, infinitely capable because
Never
it was
even
successful.
thought of that.
Right?
That is amazing.
Right. And so, I just thought, well, school good, therefore he should go to kindergarten. And, I'm being the obedient parent and the responsible parent by making him go to kindergarten. But he put up such resistance that I finally said, well, listen, if you don't want to go, if I bring you back home, you're going to have to take a nap. To which he immediately said, yes, Mommy, I want to take a nap. Yes. And I'm like, well, now I've done it because now I can't, right? I set myself up. Okay, we went home and he took a 3-hour nap.
Oh, wow.
He was exhausted.
Yeah.
So this is another thing that I want to bring to parents. You have no idea if your child's an introvert. You have no idea unless you do a whole testing on them or whatever, because you can't really tell until they get older and they can actually vocalize the way they're feeling. I did not know that he was an introvert. I could tell that he had one friend in class, but everybody loved him. So he would walk up. I remember one time in particular, they were already lined up and we were running a few minutes late or whatever. So we walk up and we went down to the front where the teacher was. And every little kid was like, hi, Shane, hi, Shane, hi, Shane, hi, Shane, all of them. And he had nothing to say to any of them except little Bobby, who's like, hi, Shane, hi, Bobby, so he was the one friend child. That's who he was. What do you want to do for your birthday? I want my friend to come over. What about another friend? No, just the one friend. That's all I want. Whereas my oldest son, extremely gregarious, super extrovert. He has 2.2 million followers on TikTok. And when he was young, who do you want to come over here for your birthday? Well, I want to invite all my friends, but can I invite their family too? Because then it'll be more gifts. Right? So 2 completely different children. And so what I'm saying to people now is you have to understand this idea of socialization is a complete misnomer. You have no idea what socialization is. You have no idea how it's accomplished. And to think that somehow school is benevolent and accomplishes on purpose the socialization of children when it's not even a class. It's not a class. I don't know why you think they accomplish it, because they don't set out to accomplish it, right? We have to really rethink the way that we think about all of these things. We say things, we just sort of blurt them out, and then nobody challenges us on them. Most wars,
so true.
Most wars were started by religion. That's patently false. I can name a ton of wars that were not started over religion. Yeah. The First World War, the Second World War, the Korean War, the Vietnam War, the War of 1612. the French and the French, like you can just go on the Civil War, like all of them were not started by religion. Name a war that was started by religion. The Crusades. What do you want? You know what I mean? But we say things, and because we went to school and we were taught that we know stuff, even though we don't know stuff. And I'm guilty too. Like, I'm not saying that everybody's an idiot. I'm saying that we were taught things that just weren't true. So you're entitled to your own opinions, but not your own facts, right? It's this little conundrum that we find ourselves in. Yes. And so we're faced with this spectacle of very, very bad schooling.
It's funny, but I remember listening to It's Beginning to Look a Lot Like Christmas one year, because I love, Christmas songs, and we love Christmas around here. And it suddenly hit me, that eponymous song, and the one line in it that says, "And Mom and Dad can hardly wait for school to start again." And I remember thinking, why would you? Why? I don't get that. Why? I want my kids to stay home. I guess I don't understand why you want the school to start again. But I totally agree with your every point you've made. I mean, we are not thinking in the way that we're not thinking kid-centered. We're thinking parent-centered. And I think that's what you do when you take kids to school, is you're thinking about you. You're not really thinking about the kid.
Well,
and I think
absolutely, we've been taught that warehousing kids all day long is normal, and raising your children and educating your children yourself is not normal, and that's backwards.
That's correct. That's absolutely correct. And so then we don't think twice about it. Right. And it's completely wrong and sadly extraordinarily damaging. And so now, because we've had decades of you drop your kids off at school because that's better for them. And it's also haphazardly, it's also better for you, but that's coincidental. It's better for them. It's better for them. It's better for them, so that you don't feel guilty for offloading your kids, right? And so now we've come to this point where we so don't feel guilty. We're proud to offload our children. And Mom and Dad can't wait for school to start again because, the kids are such a burden, right? Now, take that and extrapolate that, right? We don't give that much thought. It's wrong. It seems wrong. There's something that's not quite right about that. No, this is how wrong it is. So now we have an abortion culture, because we don't value children, because nobody wants to spend time with stupid, pesky little kids, right? That's where we are today. So we don't value children. So when a parent considers, maybe I want to stay home with my kids, the immediate knee-jerk reaction is, what is wrong with you? Who in their right mind would want to stay home with their kids? Right?
Yeah, but it's kind of like you said earlier. I remember feeling the same way. We had a homeschooling family in our neighborhood early on, and we were like, "Oh, they're so weird. They
Your kids are there all the time. Those poor kids,
and they're riding around in the street on their bikes during the day."
What? Terrible. And how dare those children have fun during the day?
No. Well, my kids are in school. My kids are learning something. Those kids are just riding down the street on their bikes.
It's so sad.
It is.
Okay,
but
now here's another way that it's affected the culture, right? Because we went to school, and because the school is all consumed with academics, and academics is really just your guarantee of getting a good job. And good in that case means money, more money, okay? So now all of our priorities are money-centric.
Yep.
Yes.
It is skewed, all of our priorities. Children are very low on the totem pole. Money is up here. The more money you have, the happier you'll be.
Yep.
That's a lie, by the way.
Absolutely.
But that's the lie that's perpetuated in our schools. And so then... And by the way, the other part of that lie is that God doesn't exist.
Yeah.
Just no.
Right.
There's no God. They don't even the pagans back in the Roman era, right? Even the pagans believed in spirit. Even the Romans worshiped the gods.
Right?
Right?
Right.
But no, we are so far advanced. We're material only. And the God thing, that's like not even worthy of consideration inside a system that purports to educate.
Right. And
And
government will
so
give you all of the rules.
right. So the whole spirituality goes out the window, goes out with the bathwater, so to speak. And then you go to college, you get a good job, you get a career. Let's say you hit the jackpot. Let's say you really do well and you are a highfalutin CEO of a business, whatever, like you're really getting it done and you're making beaucoup buck. But you're not happy because there's no spirituality in your life. And you're going, why am I not happy? I mean, I bought myself another Ferrari and it's really pretty, but for some reason I don't know, I'm just not feeling it anymore, right? Because money doesn't buy you happiness. And your kids are off at college and they won't talk to you. And your wife is doing whatever she's doing with the pool boy. And you're like, why am I not happy? And you have no idea.
Yeah.
Because of the school system, it set you up. It set you up.
Well, you know, another thing.
Go ahead.
Another thing that I noticed too, I lost my mom this last year, and it was really a concern for me because she had started to get a little bit of dementia, and, you know, I was committed to, you know, taking care of her. And it really also, it's not just the kids. I think this entire institutionalizing education has institutionalized us completely to become so infantilized and so self-centered that we warehouse old people now too. So we don't just warehouse kids, we warehouse old people. And so
people are expendable. We're just numbers.
That's exactly right. And there's just no, the concept of family is laughable now, and people laugh that you want to have a family. And it's a very sad thing, but institutionalizing and making government the center of your life has brought us to a place where all we think about is government and institutions. And, you know, you make such really excellent points. I do want to ask you some questions though. So you have 3 kids. Have your oldest kid, is that Braden?
Yep.
So he has a book out, doesn't he? What's the book again? Tell me the book.
So Braden Sorbo's book is called The BS Guide to Politics.
That was what it was. I just saw it the other day.
It's sort of an irreverent, sarcastic look at political terms of the day to inform and entertain. It's meant for a slightly younger audience. So, you know.
Well, I'm just curious, how in the world did you turn out a child that can be a published author at what is he, 20 now?
He's 21, but he published it at 19. Wow.
So gosh.
Yeah, he's pretty driven, and he really wants people to know who he is. That's been that's his goal. He wants people to know who he is. So, you know, when he was in speech and debate, he picked a topic and he started writing it up. And I said, listen, I think you ought to know you can't win with this one. But I mean, people will know who you are. He said, yeah, that's what I want.
Okay.
He's not about winning. He's about people understand. So he's a messaging guy. That's why he has 2.2 million on TikTok, and he actually runs people's Twitter accounts and Instagram, social media.
Oh, that's great.
He is clever in ways I didn't know were possible, and he is very witty. And because social media tends to be short form, he's very good at just cutting right to the quick and, you know, putting out a blurb on whatever the topic might be. So that's what he does. And then my middle son is 19, graduated last year, and he's, well, both my boys want to be actors. No comment. But, you know, they're kind of,
for a reason.
yeah, I mean, they're working it, they're getting it done. So I can't really, kibitz too much. And then my youngest daughter is an artist, and she's the one who taught me the most about education. And I will say that if I had submitted her to the school system, I probably would have lost her. We do especially the introverts among us, we do them a great disservice by subjecting them to 8 hours a day of kids full time, 24. Like, I think that's a terrible, terrible thing that we do. And not only that, but because she's an artist, they would have disdained or devalued her contribution. And her artwork is really quite extraordinary. She's genius in ways that I can't comprehend. Also, different. So my kids are so different. And I know that God gives us our children to teach us lessons, and my children have taught me a great deal. I will say that. And so part of my mission is to inform parents that their children are there to teach them, and that they should not offload that teaching onto somebody else, because it won't benefit the other person. Your children were handcrafted, so to speak. And there's a lot of benefit there for you as an individual. You'll be a better person. But not
that
if you
is
just
awesome. What
give
an
it away.
awesome way to say. That's an awesome way to say that, because I hadn't even looked at it from that perspective. Because I so enjoyed. I just graduated my last one, who is also an introvert, who is also an artist. So that's pretty interesting.
Yeah.
But I just graduated my last one, and I'm so sad. I already miss it. I mean, it was the best, most frustrating, most wonderful, most everything, and I would never have taken that back. I would do it again 100 times. It was the best.
So let me share this with you, because, I'm very blunt. I don't mince words very, very much. And parents say that they're really struggling with homeschooling. And I say, if it's hard, you're doing it wrong. And, that seems pretty harsh. But the fact is, children are born curious. Your job as a parent is to stoke their curiosity and feed it. And also give it some guidance so that they're curious about the right things and not curious about the wrong things, where they're seeing things that they can't unsee, etc. Which, by the way, is what the school does. It exposes children to things that are dangerous to them, that are bad for them. And your job as a parent is to prevent that. So you can't be, sending your children to complete strangers and think that they're going to come out educated. So that's why I developed the resources that I have, the playbook for home learning. They're your kids, to try to just expose people to what we mean by homeschooling. And I'm the first to admit I schooled my first two much more than I should have. I think that because all we know of education is what we learned in school. And so this is the playbook for home learning. It's a workbook that comes with a series of 15 DVDs 15 videos that live online. And so you do the videos. It's basically a course, and it will revamp the way it'll basically set you free from the shackles of our modern school system. Because what we learned in school is that education has to look like ABC, and it doesn't. And if you ask part of the proof that I give for that is, ask anybody if they do for a living what they went to school for. 90% of people don't. 90% of people will say to you, I learned most of what I do not in school.
Right.
There I think it may even be higher than that. It's a lot. And so then you have to ask yourself, so what did you go to school for? Like, and these are people who have graduate degrees, and they're not doing what they really studied in school.
Ouch, you got me.
So expensive. They come out of school and come out of college in deep, serious financial debt. And that's no way to set up a person for success in life. There's no way.
So, and that's in that. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Jules.
I wanted to go back to what you were talking about, the abortion culture. One of the things, I was executive director for the pregnancy center here in my town. And one of the things we faced most often was girls, young girls would get pregnant, and their reason for needing an abortion was so that they could continue going to school, so they so it didn't interrupt their college education. And that was that was probably the biggest hurdle we would have to overcome. Fortunately, we had a couple of volunteers who had done it and were able to counsel these girls. But that 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 an
But
education is more
imagine
important than a life.
that's their excuse that they think
Yes,
is perfectly acceptable, that their life and their college should come before the life of a child.
right, exactly. And that their education is more important than their child's life at all. I mean,
Right.
altogether.
Right.
It was heartbreaking. But
If you could pick probably the most favorite thing about homeschooling your kids, do you have like a one thing, or is it just a general kind of, I just loved being around my kids? I
Yeah.
mean,
No, I tell you, and I get emotional about it.
yeah,
I try to paint pictures for parents because the picture that we have is so of education in general is such a distortion of the
correct.
truth. I tell parents that years ago I had 3 teenagers, young teenagers, middle-aged teenagers, right? And my husband traveled a lot, and so on any given evening I would go up to my bed early, and because it was cozy, and I would just hunker down in bed and I'd be on my laptop just getting some work done. And teenagers, I've got 2 introverts and an extrovert. They pretty much have their lives. They're very independent, and so that was like perfectly fine for me to do that. But on any given occasion, one of them would come and softly knock on my door and come into my bedroom and sit on the end of my bed and just talk, just chat about their day. And I would gently close my laptop and put it off to the side, making a mental note, okay, it's going to be a late evening tonight, or I'm not going to get that thing done. I'll have to finish it tomorrow. But that was the relationship that I have with my children is astonishingly good. It's shocking because the culture tells you teenagers rebel. And I'm here to tell you that's a lie.
that's a
I was
lie.
on Glenn Beck recently, and I said that, and he said, "Oh, I don't know about that," because he has teenagers, or he had teenagers, and he went through the rebellious phase, and that's unfortunate. But he also sent them to school part-time some of the time that they were being raised. And I will tell you, when you give the child a different authority who has the capacity to challenge your authority, which the school does, and they challenge your authority every
Yes.
day,
Every day.
then of course the child will challenge your authority. But because my kids basically never went to another authority, it was me and my husband, we were the authority, and we had open dialogue. They never outright challenged my authority. They were never rebellious. In fact, my son did something yesterday that I realized this morning, and I'm like, hey, how did that happen? And then, right? And so he came up to me a little bit later in the morning, and he said, listen, I understand that was a mistake on my part. I didn't mean for it to look that way. I didn't mean for that to happen that way. I thought that I had taken care of the thing, but apparently I didn't, so I apologize. It's
Nice.
that easy. And by the way, I very seldom, once I figured it out, now I was an angry parent when I started. I was easy to anger because I didn't realize that I had all the power. You, as the parent, you hold all the cards. There is absolutely no reason for you to ever lose your temper or be angry with your children because you run the show. They know it and you know it. Their job is to challenge you. You simply don't allow them to challenge you. You still run the show. There's no reason to be angry. If there's a punishment that needs to be meted out, you mete out the punishment. And you're sorry for the kid because they brought the punishment on themselves, but that's the punishment.
Right.
So once I had that figured out, I never struggled with anger. It was easy. And that's why there's no acrimony between me and my kids today. I had a situation with another child, and he was getting upset because he perceived things in a certain way. I'm not really sure why. he said some things that were like, but that's absolutely not true. So I'm not sure where that came from. And we ended the discussion basically agreeing to disagree. Okay. The next morning, he comes up to me. Actually, the next morning, we have breakfast, but it's a little chilly in the room, you know, when it's a little chilly.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
There's
yes.
some unresolved stuff, but nobody's going to bring it up.
Yes.
And I'm just Mrs. Cheerful because there's no problem for me. Everything is fine. I hope that he sort of comes under the wing soon. I hope that he gets it figured out and, you know, isn't too out there, right? For too long. And at 10:30, I'm getting ready to run out the door, and he comes up to me and he hugs me. And so I hugged him back, and then I looked in his eyes, and he was teary-eyed. And I said, "What's going on?" And he said, "You know, I don't know." And I said, "Oh, okay." I said, "Are you scared?" And he said, "I don't know, maybe." And like, wow. I'm emotional now, but he was emotional, right? He's 19, or he might have been 18 at the time. He's going through some big changes. Life is looking different than it ever has before. You know, we have to understand where our children are and meet them there.
Right.
And so I said, and I'm not here to cause problems for him, right? But a lot of times we get our egos involved, and it's like, well, I'm going to show him, how dare he, whatever. I don't do that. That's a game. I don't need that. I just want the best for him. And so that's what I try. That's what I go for. And if I miss the mark, I apologize. And if I hit the mark, then we can rejoice. And, you know,
it's what you're saying again strikes another chord with me too, because the whole apology thing. This is another one too. Do you remember the "my bad"?
My bad.
I outlawed that in my house because I was like, my bad doesn't mean anything. You're not telling me anything. You mean you apologize. That's what you really mean.
Yes.
But we're not going to use the phrase "my bad." Because I just thought it made light of the fact that you were wrong. Because the one thing I stressed with my kids constantly, the only way you learn sometimes is when you do something wrong. And you have no accountability if you can't say, "Oops, I did that wrong." And it wasn't a whole loss because I learned something from it.
I love it because my bad is actually what it really means is I did something wrong, but I'm not going to apologize.
Right.
I'll admit that it was wrong, but that's as far as I'll go.
That's correct. Yeah. So we just did not do that in my house.
I remember I outlawed whatever. You weren't allowed to say whatever.
Whatever.
Not an answer.
Yeah. Bad attitude. So I wanted to ask you, because another thing that caught my attention after you were talking about that because I have one that's, you know, he's had some issues. I mean, he's another one that you could never have let the public school have that child. He would not have had a good end. Julia and I and all of us here at ROPE have made a lot about the American Society of Counselors and the fact that public schools today seem to be bringing in more and more and more counselors, and that's what they, want to do. And to me and to us, a counselor counseling your child instead of you counseling your child. Now, there are some cases where, a parent needs to get involved and bring in a third party, but they do that together. Correct. They don't do that in a school where, mom is not present or dad isn't present or grandma or whomever. And I think I love that you stressed that. The one great thing about homeschooling is growing up with your children and being able to talk to them and reason with them and counsel them and not have somebody else do that, not put them in a place where you're unable to see them during the day and see the problems they're having or see you kind of how their emotions are running. So I just love, I hope that also encourages parents to really think about homeschooling for the upcoming semester.
Yeah, I think it's important to understand that every school is a religious school.
Yes,
It is with
it
God or
is.
When you're
without God.
talking about a counselor, you're talking about giving
Yeah,
somebody massive authority and you don't even know their worldview.
Exactly.
correct.
I remember I had a friend who had somebody who was in the hospital, a loved one in the hospital, and they were frustrated because it felt like the hospital staff was not that interested in keeping this loved one alive. And I said, well, it sounds to me like you have a litmus test to give to every doctor who is assigned to the case. And the thing you ask them is, are you pro-life? I think that that's a decent
Um,
litmus test. You need to know their worldview. If their worldview is better off dead, maybe they're not the person you want treating your loved one.
Right.
And unfortunately, this is what we have in our schools. We have counselors whose worldview is better off with gender surgery, better off with a different name, better off with secrets kept from the parents.
Yes.
All of these odd, terrible ideas about children and about raising children. And, you have to be very careful. But when you drop your child off at the school gates, the child knows that you are subjugating your authority. And the first time that child comes home with a permission slip or whatever, Mommy, you have to sign this. Teacher says you have to sign this. And you take it because you have to sign it because you got to, these are the rules. And you take it, okay, I'll sign it. You sign your name.
Hmm.
You've just subverted your authority under that of the teacher and the school.
Yep.
And so, you've lost a connection with your child because your child you're diminished in the eyes of the child. You're diminished. There's no way around it. That's just the way it works.
So, if you had one thing to say to parents that have kids in public school and they're thinking to themselves, because we talk to a lot of parents that say exactly these words, I can't homeschool my child. I mean, we hear that thing. I don't know how many times we hear that, but it's on a very regular basis. I can't homeschool my child. I have no idea how I would do that. I don't know what I would do. I can't do that. What words do you have, because I know you have them, that are encouragement for these parents to really understand the price that they're going to pay if that child stays in a public school?
Well, those are not encouraging words because that price is very, very high. And so I guess the correct answer to I can't homeschool my children is you can't afford not to.
Excellent.
Because you have no idea the price that you're paying. And what the school has convinced you of is that you are not sacrificing anything by dropping your kids off at school. But I'm here to tell you that the opposite is true. You're sacrificing everything when you drop your kids off at school. If you think you need alone time now, just wait until you really get alone time when your kids won't have anything to do with you later, right? I mean, there are lots of ways of putting it, but really, in order to be encouraging, the answer to I can't homeschool is yes, you can, and I can show you how. It's not nearly as hard as they've convinced you that it is. It's not nearly as challenging. It's much more rewarding than they've told you it is, because they don't want you to know that it's rewarding because they want your children. And so the thing that I want to say to parents who think that it's okay to drop your children off at school is they want to have sex with your children. If you're okay with that, there's nothing I can do. But if you're not okay with that, do not put your children in public school. And very few private schools, frankly, because the private school teachers went to the Marxist indoctrination colleges just like all the public school teachers did.
Yes,
With few exceptions. I will make exceptions. By the way, I make exceptions for teachers all the time. I don't denigrate all teachers. I think that teachers, by and large, are trying to they're trying to perform a service for young people, and that's why they go into teaching. But at this point, you're losing credibility if you're still in that system because the system is so perverted and so corrupted. And frankly, at this point, if you're a good teacher and you have the best interests of the child, especially if you're a Christian, get out of the system, hang out your shingle, and start home educating other people's children for them. It is not a full-time job, so you can take on plenty of children and just guide the parents through that. Now, if you don't know how to do that because you went to school and they taught you what, they taught you what schooling was, but they
thought
didn't
you
actually,
couldn't do that.
yeah, and they didn't actually teach you what education was because they were too busy teaching you what schooling is. I can help you too. I'm working on developing resources for pastors now, and the next thing I'm going to do is for teachers. We really need to rethink education. And in fact, look, our school system is to create workers for 100 years ago.
Right. Well,
Welcome to the new century. How about we help your children become valuable assets to the current environment as opposed to the one from 100 years ago?
Well,
Yeah, go ahead.
years ago, Julie and I and Rope, we were very concerned about the amount of data that is collected
Yes.
by public schools. And we had a workforce initiative because don't forget the Marxist term, we all have to be in the workforce, right? And we're all just a cog in that machine. And so we had workforce initiatives that were coming through our government and going into the public schools. And there was a pipeline, they love to call it a pipeline, of children
Yep.
that we could get them into this workforce. Well, I think the thing that's the most frustrating too that we haven't brought up about parents is the amount of data that is collected on your child. And years ago under Obama, he had they were implementing something called the state longitudinal database systems, and every all 50 states have one. And the whole idea behind the database was to hook the child's schooling up with their job, get them into some kind of a workforce situation where they could collect the data from that job so that they could tell, did they educate the child for that job? Now, here's the thing. When we were all young people, if you wanted to get a job at IBM used the money that they had, their private resources, to train you to work at IBM. But businesses now, thanks to the infinitely horrible Chamber of Commerce, have figured out how to use your tax dollars to train your child, not in a big, broad, the way they should be trained, but trained for to be a cog maker. Right. So instead of IBM now using their private resources to train their workers, they're using the state through these workforce initiatives to train your child to be a worker for them. Well, let me ask this question then. So what happens if you lose your job at IBM as one of your trained workers? Well, if you have no broad, well-rounded education, that's a good question. Where are you going to end up? So I think the other thing that we have to admonish parents about frequently is even if you bring your kids home, homeschooling isn't public school at home. And you alluded to this, Sam, early on when you were talking about your children being their own kids and how different they were. Homeschooling isn't public school at home. You're not, trying to fill in the little areas. You're trying to find what's good for that, what works for that child, and build on what works for that child. But if you've got them in public school, they're being groomed as a worker for some organization that's actually using the state to, get their workforce
and the
trained.
state is deciding who they are. The state is
Right.
deciding who they will be trained up to be.
They collect data on them and say, oh, well, we think this child, because they're 10 years old now, we think they're going to be best if they can take this path. And it's insane that a 10-year-old child should be groomed for a specific job.
Absolutely.
Well, they're being groomed for other work right now, but
that's exactly right.
Proverbs says, raise up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it. But if you understand the Hebrew text of that proverb, it means something more like discover with the child who he is meant to be. And then when he is old, he will not depart from it. So it has a different sort of meaning than the meaning that we just naturally ascribe with the words that we use. And so I like to tell parents that your job is not to determine where your child's going to end up in life. Your job is to unwrap the gift that your child is and discover what's inside. And when you discover what's inside, you can help set that thing free. You can help that thing to grow. And then you can stand back and watch it flourish, right? And so that's really what education is. It's about the whole child. It's about virtue. It's about beliefs. It's about worldview. It's
integrity.
And of course some academics. But the point is that all academics is discovery of the world around us, which was created by a creator. Therefore, all academics really is the search for God in the universe. And so when you start to take that approach, then the academics should never be tedious. They should be exciting. And, your child doesn't have to excel at math. I don't know who wrote the book and said every child must know calculus. And this is, by the way, hard for me to say because I happen to love calculus and I tutored it when I was in college. So
that's awesome.
It's hard. I think everybody should know calculus because I love it. But some people simply are not predisposed to really want to know calculus or to need it or any of that stuff. What's great about calculus is how it exposes the tremendous organization of the universe, if you will. The fact that math works. Here's what's amazing for people to understand. And this is like a big physics thing. There are laws of physics that apply in real life. Gravity, you drop something, it falls. We don't understand gravity. We just know that it works. And so there's a constant, the gravitational constant, 32 feet per second squared, and we can put that in a formula and we can calculate things. We don't really understand what is gravity. Why does this larger mass attract the smaller mass? We don't have a good explanation for that yet, okay? But there are laws in physics and math, well, math predominantly, that don't apply in the real world. Why? They are laws. They work in mathematics every time, but there's no physical application for them. Therefore, there must be a spiritual realm where those laws work and are necessary. Otherwise, they wouldn't exist.
Excellent.
I know, it's really cool, isn't it? It kind of blew my mind when I first read that. I'm like, wait, what?
Well,
and then it started to make sense.
You and I met when we were fighting Common Core.
Yes.
And because I was on your radio show when you were back in California, like 2013 or something. And one of the things that we were very upset of it, and I think you were as well, is the changing of math. Because what you just said, I'm just going to translate it a little bit. Math is truth.
Mm-hmm.
Math is truth.
Well, math is the language of logic. Okay.
Yes.
They purposefully changed math to make it more difficult for people so that they would not be able to apply logic. It is abusive what they did. And here's the problem. That was the entire school industry of the United States.
Yes.
So now they don't have anything to recommend them because they allowed that to happen. There is no coming back from that. And if you read They're Your Kids, I go into the whole Common Core for math in detail and explain to you why it is so dangerous and why it is so completely beyond the realm in terms of abusive to have done this to math, to make children struggle like that, to put math outside their reach, beyond their reach, and basically to tell them how stupid they are. And in fact, there's a quote, I can't remember which book I put this in, but there's a quote by one of the guys who was sort of part of the crafters of our modern school system, who said that the standardized testing was actually more like a dunce cap, so that students would know how stupid they were. That is why they implemented standardized testing.
Oh my goodness. David Coleman would say.
Well, yeah, the architect of Common Core. So how can parents who aren't in this system, because this is another question. You alluded to this too a minute ago, but I want to kind of expound on it. So another argument that we get a lot is, well, I'm a single mom. I can't, homeschool my kid, or, I have to work 2 jobs, or, something. And I'm not saying these aren't legitimate things. I mean, they are legitimate things. What are some of your ideas for helping these parents to be able to school their kids then at home?
So this is what we have to understand. We don't know what education is. And so when you say I can't homeschool, it's because you don't know what homeschooling is. You don't, and I know that sounds really whatever. It sounds the way that it sounds.
You can't say whatever.
I can't say whatever. It sounds really, you get it. But it is the truth. And so when you say I can't homeschool, that's because you have this weird idea that's not true about what homeschooling is. Can you parent? If you can parent, you can shepherd your child through his or her own education. You can do that, even if you're a working parent, even if you work 2 jobs, even if you work full time, even if you work outside the house, even if. The point is, you have to learn to prioritize. Now, we're not taught to prioritize in school. We are taught to make pros and cons lists. That's abusive. I'm using that term too much. That's ridiculous, because what happens when you make a pros and cons list, you have a list of pros and you have a list of cons, and you look back and forth, and you don't have a decision because it's back and forth and you've got lists. It doesn't help you make the decision. It's just, oh, well, I've got a lot more pros on one side, but you don't know if those pros actually are better than the cons, better than some of the cons, better than all the cons. You don't know, because nothing's prioritized. The way to make decisions is the priority system. So what's your number one priority? Well, my number one priority is free time for me. Okay, then don't homeschool, but also don't have a job. Like, you know what I mean? Like, that's ridiculous. So if you prioritize your child, then you have to give up some things. That's how it works. Every choice is a sacrifice. Sacrifice isn't bad. Sacrifice isn't wrong. Sacrifice is actually a good thing, because in the free market system, we sacrifice the thing that we hold of lesser value because of our priorities to get the thing that we have as higher value because of our priorities. So I sacrifice $800 for an iPhone. The iPhone is worth a lot more than $800 to me. But Apple sacrifices the iPhone because Apple has a ton of iPhones and they want the $800. That's more valuable to them, right? And that's every single choice. So you have some choices to make. If you want to put your child first, I recommend it, because the payoff is tremendous, and it's in myriad ways, right? Once you put that child number one, then other things start to line up. And it's actually that simple. It's really not more complicated than that. Then you have to figure out how to get education done. Don't start schooling your child. Don't do it. Don't school. Not worth it. Get your child some fun, math cards or dice or, coins to play with or whatever. And then just start sharing with them truth, facts. And then get them good books, not books that are written after 1960. In general, those are bad books. In general, if you go anything before about 1960, you'll find good literature with good artwork, not photographs.
Yeah.
You want to inspire the imagination of the child. Don't just shove a bunch of photographs in front of him. Don't just put a bunch of documentaries on for him. But don't not do documentaries. Like, those are fun. Like shows about elephants, or I happen to love elephants, shows about marsupials or whatever. Like, expose the child to the real world and see what is it that sparks, that gets them going. And then go to the library. And if it's snakes, get them all the snake books they can carry. Let them take out 15 snake books for the 2 weeks that you got them or whatever, right? That's how you teach a child. Pretty soon he's leading his own education. Can you put some sort of rails on it, some kind of guidance? Yes, absolutely. I'm just saying, just because they do that in school, that actually is indication that it's not what you should do. I mean, look at school today. The school that we have today is the result of all the schooling that came before. That's why when people say, well, I'm running for school board because I want to fix the school, I say, but it's not broken. It's doing exactly what it was intended to do.
It's
not
running
broken.
exactly as intended.
Right. So you want to fix the school, good luck, but it's not broken. So you're going to basically, you want to rewind it. You want to set it back 30 years so that in 30 years, it can be where it is today again.
Excellent. And I have to go back to say the part you said about prioritizing versus, the lists. I honestly hadn't even thought about that either. And that's probably the best thing I've heard in recent memory, because it doesn't just apply to kids. I mean, my gosh, it would apply to what I'm doing right now. So absolutely. I think we need to change. There's so much about just our mindset today and the way that we were programmed, which is pretty much what we'd have to call it, the way we were programmed when we were kids, that we really have to put aside and open up our mind. I definitely think as Christians, when we pray, and we should pray frequently and consistently, for God to open up our eyes and show us how to do, things more in line with his will every day. But definitely, we're at the end of our hour, and I hate to keep you anymore, but do you have any parting comments? I
have a quick story if you'll let me tell it.
Absolutely. Yes. Of course we will.
So I was a young actress in Hollywood, and I wanted to be married. I knew that I wanted to be married, and I did believe in God. And so I prayed at one point because I was meeting a bunch of duds, and I said, God, I get it. There's going to be a compromise. I just need to know what I have to compromise on to be married and have kids. Like, is he going to be short? Is he going to be stupid? Is he going to be, I don't know what, right? And then a short time after that, not long after that, I flew down to New Zealand to guest star on Hercules, where I played a princess and met the love of my life, Kevin Sorbo. And he swept me off my feet, and I was like, okay, God, don't worry about it. I've got it now. It's all good. This guy doesn't require any compromise. He's perfect. He's wonderful. Yay for me, right? And as we got engaged, and we're headed towards the wedding, and I'm trying to figure out what that's going to look like and how we're going to keep a marriage together with me living in LA because I've got my career, but I do want kids, but he lives in New Zealand, but not forever. So I'll commute back and forth. But what if I go down there, then I get a call back, then I have to get on a plane to come back. And it's looking very complicated. And then he got very, very ill. He had 3 strokes. Yeah. He ended up in intensive care for a week, lying on his back, unable to move, which was hard for him because he was a guy who was going 100 miles an hour. And then, of course, I booked the best job ever. I got a national network spot for a TV commercial, not for any TV commercial. By the way, it means a lot of money, but also the TV commercial was for my very favorite thing, ice cream. And I booked it, and I had to leave the next day for New York, all expenses paid, first class, everywhere. It was just, this was the bomb. But I walked into the intensive care room, and I said to Kevin, do you want me not to go? And that put him in the unenviable position of having to admit that he needed me. But he knew that he needed me. So he said, yes, I want you not to go. And in that moment, I understood the compromise. And I looked up at the ceiling, and I said, oh, that's the compromise? My career? Done. And I never looked back. And I will tell you that I walked away from my career one more time. My toddler chased me down after an audition with her little finger out, saying, no, 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 no.
Oh my gosh.
I picked her up, I put her on my hip, and she turned to the nanny and she said, bye-bye. And I realized priorities. So I prioritized my children, and I stepped away from my career again. Fast forward, I'm homeschooling my kids. Things are going great. It's not a full-time job. I'm always trying to figure out what else to do. So I wrote a movie based on my kids because I'm raising Christian children in a very secular society. And it occurs to me that, atheists don't have their faith challenged nearly as much as my children have their faith challenged every day.
Right.
Yeah.
And my goodness, that would be an interesting movie. And I thought, that's a movie I'd actually like to see. Oh, wait, I'll write it. So I wrote a movie. Within 2 weeks, it was funded. I can guarantee you that never, ever happens. We produced the movie. My children are in it with both of us, Kevin and me. It's called Let There Be Light. I highly recommend it. It's playing on, you can stream it various places. I think it's on PureFlix now in the United States. It's called Let There Be Light. And so God redeemed my career in a way I never imagined could be possible. But I think that if you prioritize, you will be rewarded, because I knew that what I was doing was the right thing.
I love that. It was a perfect story. I mean, thank you so much for sharing that, because you're right. I think atheists and people who are irreligious, they may be agnostic or irreligious. I don't think it hits them to think on those things like that. And
they tend to be very confused people.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I've always said there's two
not
religions.
all of them, not all of them, by the way. Like, I don't denigrate people, but they are very fervent in their faith. It is a misnomer to think that being irreligious means you don't have a faith.
Right.
Everybody has a worldview. Everybody has a faith.
Yeah.
Everybody does. Well, Sam, thank you for taking your time and talking to us today. And it's
Jenny,
so good to see you again and catching up with you.
Yes.
And you look as beautiful as ever and are just
So
doing
do you.
the greatest things ever. And
All the
so
books.
please,
We can't
yes.
wait to recommend all your books to everyone.
Yes, and I'm going to put this in the stream again one more time for everybody so you can go. It's very easy to find. It's samsorbo.com. So go and check it out.
Want, by the way, sorry to interrupt, but if you want anything about the Hollywood stuff or what Kevin and I are doing in film, go to sorbostudios.com. And do sign up for the newsletters because it's just a better way for us to keep in touch with everybody. They took, obviously, they censored Kevin off of Facebook and off of LinkedIn and stuff like that. And, we are developing a second economy now, basically for people of the book, so to speak.
Well, and not only that, but I was noticing, because if you go to the website, the one that you just mentioned, that website is linked to samsorbo.com. At least that's how I found it.
Everything is there. And if you're purchasing anything, you're actually going to end up purchasing it through Sorbo Studios anyway.
Yeah.
I highly recommend Words for Warriors. Do I have one here?
Yes, you have it in the back.
Oh,
you have it behind you. Yes.
Words for Warriors. That was a lot of fun, that book. And I recommend it to people because you need to be aware of how they're trying to change the language, which is the way to change truth.
Yes.
And of course, it's lies. It's built on lies. And we have to be more aware. So I recommend that book to people.
Well,
and
and
thank you so much for having me.
You have so many Christian films that you guys have been doing lately too. So, I want to make sure, like she said, Sorbo Studios, right?
Yep.
And samsorbo.com. And you can find all those movies there too, to watch with your kids when you're at home with them.
Yep.
So thanks again, Sam. We really, really appreciate it.
Enjoyed having you on.
So enjoyed talking with you again, and just really appreciate all that you're doing for children and for families. So God bless you, and thank you so much.
Thank you.